Okay, so today let's do a deep dive into something kind of, I don't know about you, but I find it fascinating and a little unsettling at the same time. It's about what winning the lottery really tells us about the state of things, society today. We found this really thought-provoking Reddit thread, people talking about the downsides of getting super rich really quickly, and we thought it'd be interesting to look at it alongside um, some excerpts we found from a blog. This guy, Romeus T, calls himself a social observer, and he's got some interesting takes.
That's one way to put it.
He definitely keeps things interesting, but we'll get to Romeus and his, shall we say, colorful perspectives a little later. But first, let's start with this stat from that Reddit thread that really got me thinking. 70% of lottery winners end up bankrupt within 7 years. 70%. It really makes you wonder, why isn't having a ton of money a guaranteed ticket to happiness?
Yeah. It's a good question, and I think it's because it's not really about the money itself.
Yeah.
It's about the impact that sudden wealth has on your life. It changes your identity in a way, disrupts everything, your routines, who you spend time with. That sense of belonging we all crave, it all gets thrown out of whack when you suddenly have, well, more money than you know what to do with.
Yeah, it's like this massive social experiment, but with life-changing consequences. And that's where I think our friend Romeus T comes in. He's got this blog, and he really digs into what he calls the hidden dangers of winning the lottery. And let me tell you, this guy does not hold back.
He really doesn't.
He's got such a unique way of describing these things.
Oh, yeah. And while his writing style can be a little strong at times, he does bring up a really important point about, the flood of scammers and opportunists that seem to just come out of the woodwork. They target lottery winners. It's really kind of crazy.
Oh, he doesn't just bring it up. He practically shouts it from the rooftops. He's got this whole system worked out for classifying different types of scam, each one more ridiculous than the last. Like, what does he call it? The Bikini Brigade?
Yeah.
He says, and I quote, "They descend upon your beachfront mansion like a flock of brightly feathered, debt-ridden pigeons."
And then there are the pros, Romeus' term, but yeah.
Oh, right. The ones who basically think finding out you won means they deserve a finder's fee.
That's one way to put it.
It's brutal, honestly, but you can't help but laugh. But here's where Romeus goes from kind of darkly funny to actually making a lot of sense. He talks about another group he calls the sophisticated scammers. These are the ones you don't expect, financial advisors, estate planners, all smiles and expensive suits. But Romeus sees right through them. He writes, "They smell vulnerability like sharks smell blood in the water, ready to siphon off your fortune with whispers of tax shelters and offshore investments."
And that's what happens so often, and it's sad, really. These sophisticated scammers, they take advantage of the fact that most lottery winners just aren't equipped to handle that level of wealth. All the complexities that come with it, it's a recipe for disaster.
It's easy to just hear these stories and think, oh, well, they messed up, right? They made bad decisions. But Romeus is saying there's more to it. He sees these lottery winners almost like they're symbolic, victims of a system that doesn't really prepare us for, well, anything, I guess, and definitely not for sudden wealth.
Right. It's like he's saying it's not about personal failures, but like a systemic problem.
Mm-hmm.
That feeling of instability and not being able to trust anything that leads people to just blow all their money on things that don't last. Romeus sees that as a direct result of the kind of society we've built for ourselves.
Which kind of brings us to Romeus's take on this whole end of history thing, inspired by that Francis Fukuyama guy. I'm not sure I totally get it. Help me out here for those of us who haven't exactly cracked open our philosophy textbooks lately.
Okay, so basically Fukuyama argued that after the Cold War ended, that meant liberal democracy had won. It was like the ultimate point of social progress, the end of history as we knew it.
Okay.
But Romeus, he takes that idea and kind of turns it on its head.
Yeah, because it's not like we've achieved world peace or anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Romeus is focused on this idea Fukuyama had of the last man.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who is so comfortable, so complacent, living in their little bubble of consumerism that they don't have any real goals or sense of purpose beyond just buying the next thing. And Romeus sees this everywhere, this last man just kind of stumbling through a world that feels meaningless. It's like he's saying we've created a world where winning the lottery is the closest thing people have to a dream, but it's not enough to fill that emptiness.
And so that emptiness, that lack of a bigger purpose, that's what leads to those decisions that seem so irrational from the outside.
Exactly. Think about those people on that Reddit thread, the ones who are terrified of losing everything they've worked for.
Mm-hmm.
They see those lottery winners, and it's like a warning sign, right? These people achieved the so-called dream, and they still ended up lost and broken. It feeds into this very real fear that the systems we all rely on are falling apart. And Romeus would probably say those systems are already broken. He describes society as this disorganized dust of individuals, everyone just trying to grab what they can, driven by fear and distrust.
So is he saying that these lottery winners, they're like the most obvious victims of a much bigger societal decline?
Precisely. And it's with that backdrop that, this bleak but weirdly captivating worldview that we come to Romeus's let's just say his most out there theory.
Oh yeah, this is the one that I think sparked a million articles and probably got him banned from a few pet stores.
Oh, you ready for this one?
Hit me with it.
Romeus believes that our obsession with pets is a sign that we're becoming, and I'm just going to say it, a necrophilic society.
I knew this was coming, and it's still a lot to handle, but before everyone freaks out and turns off the show, we need to unpack this, because I don't think he means necrophilia in the literal sense, right?
Right, absolutely. He's drawing on the work of this psychologist Erich Fromm, who used the term in a much broader sense. For Fromm, necrophilia described a fixation on death decay, things that lack vitality.
And Romeus thinks our love for our furry friends falls into this category.
In a way, yes. He argues that our society, so focused on consumerism on the market, on buying and selling, that it's inherently necrophilic. It's like we're obsessed with turning everything, even love and connection, into something we can buy and sell.
And it's this feeling of emptiness, this lack of real human connection that pushes us to find comfort in pets.
Exactly. Pets offer this uncomplicated, unconditional love that's free from all the drama and complications of human relationships. And in a world where everything feels like a transaction, that kind of simplicity can be incredibly appealing. You know what I mean?
Okay, I'll admit there's something kind of true about that, even if it makes me uncomfortable. It's like he's saying we've gotten so used to the cold, hard logic of the market that we've forgotten how to really connect with each other.
And when you think about it in the context of those lottery winners who are suddenly cut off from their old friends and now thrust into a world where everyone just wants their money,
yeah,
suddenly that desire for simple, unconditional love, even if it's coming from golden retrievers, starts to make a lot more sense.
It really does. So is this Romeus guy just a cynic with a blog and a knack for the dramatic? Or is he onto something? Are there really these uncomfortable truths about the way we live now?
I think that's the question, isn't it?
So here we are. We started with this whole thing about lottery winners, and somehow we've ended up talking about the state of society and our love for our pets. It's been quite a journey, and I guess it makes me wonder, what's the connection here? What's the bigger picture that Romeus is trying to paint?
I think he's drawing a direct line between those things, actually. He's saying those lottery winners, they're not just a cautionary tale about personal finance. It's deeper than that. They're like a warning sign for all of us.
Because that whole thing about always chasing more, it leaves us feeling empty and disconnected.
That's exactly it. And then this idea of easy money, instant gratification.
Yeah.
It's tempting, but it's a hollow victory. Those lottery winners, they learn the hard way that money can't fix those deeper issues.
Yeah.
It can't fix that lack of real connection. And actually, it often makes it worse.
And that's where I guess it all ties back to this necrophilia thing. It's like he's saying our love for pets, even though it seems so harmless on the surface, it actually reflects something deeper going on in society. This longing for connection in a world where everything feels transactional.
Yes. And, when you think about those people on Reddit, the ones who are so scared of losing everything they've worked for, they see those lottery winners, and it's a reminder that it could happen to anyone.
Yeah.
And Romeus would say their fears are valid because the things that used to provide stability and meaning, like a sense of community, shared values, even just basic trust, those things are disappearing right in front of us.
I have to admit, it's a pretty bleak picture he's painting, but at the same time, there's this weird sense of, I don't know if validation is the right word, but it's like he's putting into words these anxieties that I think a lot of us feel, but we don't really talk about.
And that's what Romeus is so good at, right?
Yeah.
He might be a little out there, but he makes you think. He forces us to confront these uncomfortable truths about ourselves and about the world we live in.
So where do we go from here? Are we all doomed to this necrophilic fate, wandering around in this wasteland we created, just looking for comfort in our pets?
That's the million-dollar question, I guess. And in the end, it's up to each of us to decide. Do we buy into Romeus's bleak outlook, or do we use it as a wake-up call? A chance to start rebuilding those connections and rediscovering those values that seem to be slipping away. Can we create a world where winning the lottery doesn't feel like the only way to find happiness? That's the challenge.
That's a lot to think about. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into, well, I guess you could say the underbelly of modern life. And to everyone listening, we'll leave you with this. What if the solution isn't about winning the lottery, but about remembering how to connect with each other, how to rebuild those bonds of community and find a sense of shared purpose? It's something to think about, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. Until next time.